Good afternoon to everybody. I will speak of privacy. I will speak of the word privacy, what privacy means. I'm not a technologist, I'm a psychiatrist, a philosopher, a psychoanalyst, so the worst person to speak of technological issues. And indeed, I will speak of words. This one? Okay. What is this one? Okay, great. So let's start with etymology. I will use etymology quite often in this presentation. I repeat, because I love words, but also for a practical reason. Etymology allows to open words, to capture meanings and nuances, and in such a way to open our mind also to different ideas. It allows thinking a bit out of the box. It is the reason why I'm using etymology and the goal of my presentation. So privacy refers to the state of something which is separated, secluded from others. The state of being set apart. This is the Latin etymology. Well, if I ask you what could be the attribute of privacy in comparison with the attribute of public, which is the opposite. If I ask you, do you think that the public is invisible or is visible? No, probably most of you will answer, would answer, public is visible, while something which is private is hidden, is less visible. Well, let me show you this picture. In this picture, you see it very well, you see her very well. There is a nice lady. Do you see her? It's a model called Nadine, and she is nude. Could you see her? Well, this is Nadine. And Nadine, pay attention. You can say, Nadine is masked. No. Nadine is not hidden. Nadine is completely exposed. So exposed as she is nude. But she is using a technique called, a military technique called camouflage, which is the essence of this technique, that Nadine cannot be distinguished, cannot be distinct from the environment, the context, the surroundings. Okay? Don't forget this picture. We will use it later on. Now, let's move with definition. Let's move on with definition. Privacy, this is one of the oldest definition of privacy, which is still, to me, one of the best. It is the definition provided at the end of the 19th century by the American judge Louis Brandeis, which is the right to be left alone. Let's compare now this definition, the previous definition, which is most recent one. Which is privacy is the condition of not having undocumented personal information known or possessed by others. Are they speaking of the same thing? Come on. They are speaking of two different things. They call privacy something which is completely different. According to Brandeis, privacy was a right, is a right, particular kind of right to be left alone. It is difficult to understand what it means exactly, but it is a right. Here, it is an issue of ownership. And indeed, this is a good example of the confusion we are doing between privacy and personal data protection, which are two different things, as I'm going to show you. And the more we frame privacy in terms of personal data protection, the more we think of privacy in terms of something to be hidden, of something to be masked. And Anonymous has taken as a symbol the mask. Anonymity is the ideal rebellion against the surveillance society. This is the slogan. But think again to Nadine. Nadine, you cannot see Nadine because Nadine had no mask. Try to imagine. If Nadine had a black mask on the face, you can immediately see her in the picture. So, the fact to be unmasked, to be completely exposed, nude, made Nadine invisible. If she had a mask, she could be very visible. Data protection. The idea of personal data is a consequence of the idea of data. And the idea of data is probably the most important concept of the information revolution. With the information revolution is a technological event in which we learned how to turn information, which was chiefly quantitative, how to turn information into, which was chiefly qualitative, sorry, to turn information into a quantitative item. So to turn information into digits. Turning information into digits is not a trivial event because it turns information into a commodity, something that can be marketed, can be traded, can be stored, can be handled, can be manipulated. This happened only twice in the history, as far as we know, in the history of the human species. It happened with the agricultural revolution. Nomadic people, for 100,000 of years, human beings lived on the planet Earth as a nomadic population. They chased the animals, wild animals, they gathered vegetables, fruits. They had value, vegetables and animals, but they were not commodities. When they became commodities in the moment in which, when farming was invented. Animals and plants were domesticated. And in that moment, they became farming product. They became commodities. And this changed everything. This is the beginning of human civilization for us. Something, and it lasted millennia. Something similar happened with the Industrial Revolution. With the Industrial Revolution, again, we created a new commodity. Not from nothing, not from scratch, from something which was existent. What we turned into a commodity? Human labor. Human labor existed earlier, well before the Industrial Revolution, of course. But what they paid skills, knowledge, power, products, work products. With the Industrial Revolution, we started paying working hours, working time, which is a completely unthinkable idea for millennia, for the previous millennia. If you tell a Roman, a Greek, an Egyptian, that someone could sell his time, well, no, what does it mean? Make sense. What does it mean? And it was possible thanks to a technological innovation, the mechanical clock. It was the mechanical clock, the enabling technology of the Industrial Revolution, because it allows people to sell their work, their time, working time. The working class is not the class of people who work. Everybody works. The working class is the class of people who sell their working hours, their labor time. And of course, a new commodity generates a surplus of value. It is a driver for innovation unthinkable. And the third, and with the Industrial Revolution, was summarized by Benjamin Franklin with this saying, time is money, which is not a saying, an old saying. It is quite recent. It was invented by Benjamin Franklin, so at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And today, what is happening is that we are creating a new commodity, and the new commodity is data, which is information translated into digits. And so information is money today. And so you can understand, at this point, you can understand the confusion between privacy and personal data protection, because personal data protection concerns an economic asset, while privacy concerns individuals, concerns human rights. It's two different games. The more you frame privacy in terms of personal data protection, the more privacy becomes privacy-enhancing technology, privacy impact assessment, anonymity, pseudonymity, these kind of things you are, I think, I suppose, you are quite familiar with. But the consequence is that privacy becomes more and more an issue, a matter dealt with by lawyers or legal departments. I like them a lot. I have nothing against lawyers. I think that personal data protection is an important, very important, fundamental issue of modern society, but said so, it is not privacy. It's another thing. So privacy, personal data is about economic asset, privacy is about individuality. Again, let me use etymology. What does it mean, individuality? It's made of two words, in, which is a negative particle, and duality. So in is invisible, not visible, impossible, not possible. So not duality. What is duality? Duality is two, dual, duet, due in Italian. So individuality means indivisibility. It is the Latin word for atom. In Greek was atom, something that cannot be split in two. It is the last unique, single individual. And actually, we use in English and in other languages as well, individual as a synonym of person. We speak of person or individual like the same entity. And the person has, again, unexpected surprise. Person comes again. It is not my fault if Latin has generated so many words. Person comes from the Latin again, from the Latin persona. And persona in Latin, in Rome, meant by and large the same things it means person today. But originally, persona, was the mask. The name persona was invented, was created to describe, to speak of the mask, the theatrical mask. And the etymology of persona is per sound, augmented voice, persona, per sound, augmented voice, augmented sound. Why? Because the mask was made in such a way to amplify, like a megaphone, the voice of the actor's voice. And there are many religious, ritual reasons, but I don't want to enter into this. Let me just to speak of the practical reason. Romans had very large theaters. You should imagine that an amphitheater can have more than 1,000 seats. Could you imagine the person, the last ranks, what they could hear or see on the stage? Almost nothing. So the mask was fundamental to give actors on the stage a face, that is to say, an identity, and to give them a voice. Mask provide voice and identity. And it is so true that in the classic antiquity, the idea of mask was a positive idea. For us, to mask something is to hide, is to have something to conceal. But on the contrary, in the antiquity, masks were symbol of the richness of the human soul, of the nuances of a human being. Who were maskless people? Maskless people were the rude people, the poor people. The slaves were called maskless. The slaves had no name. They had the master name, sometimes a nickname, but no identity at all. And they were called maskless. The first thing which happened when a court freed a slave was to give a name to the slave and to provide him with an identity. Yeah? Yeah, I'm going quite rapid, but I started late. So, privacy is not about hiding, but it is about masking, but it is not by hiding, but it is about providing identity, people with an identity. So, the essential element in privacy, when you provide an identity, an individuality, is something which is distinct from, you remember Nadine. Nadine is invisible because she confused, she's blended with the environment. But if you need to emerge as an individual, there should be some borders. Boundaries are fundamental. And privacy is basically the whole of boundaries which describe an individual. There are bodily boundaries. You all know the idea of personal space. You are probably familiar with this idea. I would like only to draw your attention that bodily boundaries have a neurological basis. People with a lesion of a certain area of the brain called amygdala they don't have the perception of personal space. Mental boundaries are extremely important to create the individual, the identity, because the child has a feeling of confusion with his environment. He doesn't feel himself distinct from the mother. And how he starts understanding, recognizing the inward from the outward? In the moment in which he discovers that his mind cannot be read. That I'm about to close. In that moment, the child discovers that he has an internal life and there is an external life. The internal life is his private life. And this is a demonstration that the saying is not a saying, that's the formula. You have nothing to hide, nothing to fear. Don't fear if you have nothing to hide. Don't fear surveillance. No, the problem of people is not what they have to hide. We need to hide, not because we have something that we fear. We need to hide because our identity is based on our experience that we can hide something. Hiding is a fundamental experience. The moment in which the child learns to lie is extremely important. Then there is value boundaries. I can speak of them, but this is. But this is uniqueness. But this is about uniqueness. Dignity is defined in terms of dignity or uniqueness. Well, this is the last. We are drop of waters. Privacy is the surface tension which creates our identity. Privacy, identity, and dignity are the same thing. And this has also some practical and technological consequence that you probably can guess.